Unreal Engine is ruining video games.
Unreal Engine 5.
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 Unreal Engine is ruining video games.
Okay.
Unreal Engine has made real-time, near photorealistic graphics readily available for whoever wants to take their time to learn their stupidly overcomplicated program. And with the gift of bringing the power of in-house engines to the public, in return we've gotten an oversaturated market of absolute blah. Now don't get me wrong.
I think this is going to happen no matter what. I don't think that Unreal Engine caused this to happen. It's just those games were bad before then too.
I absolutely love Unreal Engine. For God's sake, I hope I do. It single-handedly pays my bills. But that doesn't mean I don't have many problems with the engine. With the release of Unreal Engine 5, you all have probably seen tens of different games coming out in the next year or two made in Unreal Engine.
Yeah, they look really good.
And maybe it's just me, but I've been quite disappointed when watching these trailers. It's just this repetitive, bland look that me and my coworker have been calling the Unreal Engine look. It's this indescribable feeling of sameness that has plagued the visual style of all these games.
Oh, I think why this is happening, I do think that he's actually right with this. And I think the reason why is that you see a lot of games that are reusing assets from the Unreal Store. Because most people haven't developed their own assets inside of the game. So they're reusing basic assets and textures without developing them on their own because they don't have as much time inside of the engine. And this happened with Bleak Faith. It's happened with, I don't think it was Forspoken, but there were a handful of other games that did the same thing. So yeah, I think this is absolutely true. And it is a real feeling. And the reason why it feels the same is because it is the same.
It's something
Your
about the
feelings are
depth
valid.
of focus and the hair and the foliage and the particle systems. Oh God, don't get me started on the particle systems. Maybe this is just a thing that I care about. And
I think the sameness really applies not in terms of the faces, but in terms of the outdoors. Like the trees and grass and everything, it all has the exact same look because a lot of them are the exact same trees and the exact same grass.
Maybe it's just because I work in Unreal Engine for 10 hours every day, so I'm so used to seeing all the weird uniquities and imperfections that the engine brings to these renders, but so many games these days feel like personality-less asset flips. This is not...
The reason why they feel like asset flips with no personality is because they're asset flips with no personality. Wait, are we good? I had a little frame drop. We'll go back. Are we good now?
Uniquities and imperfections that the engine brings to these renders, but so many games these days feel like personality-less asset flips.
So what I said before I DC'd is that the reason why they look like personality-less asset flips is because they are. That's exactly what they are. They're not very good. People are just trying to capitalize on the way it looks. Absolutely.
This is not to say that Unreal is purely to blame. Unreal is a tool that many studios use to help them create hyper-stylized masterpieces. Things that step out of this uncanny valley of Unreal Engine and into the feeling of any other AAA game. Maybe it's that damn Square Enix budget that gave Final Fantasy VII and Octopath the ability to make these wonderful demonstrations of what the engine could produce. And maybe that's what the real problem is. Games are able to be made by smaller and smaller studios these days, and thus they rely more and more...
Yeah, if there are a lot of small studios that suck. And they make games that suck big dicks. It's just that simple.
On the tools like Unreal Engine to make their art. Some indie studios can absolutely use this in amazing ways. Take Stray, for example, a game that is completely stylized and beautiful.
I always kind of wanted to play this game. I never did.
Most studios rely so heavily on what Unreal Engine can do that they all become this unstylized, semi-realistic blob. Unreal Engine itself is...
I think this is just a growing pain, personally. Is that as everybody is transitioning over to this new engine, they haven't developed their own style inside of the engine enough. It's like kind of everybody starts from like this base point, And then the more that they fork out, the farther apart they are. But because the engine is new, they aren't forked out that much. I think it's just a growing pain.
An amazing tool that can help us create stunning games, but it's a double-edged sword because it has that trap of the unrealiness of it, which is honestly hard to escape, especially if you're an indie. Unreal Engine isn't really built for indie teams. It makes the promise of easy photorealism to whoever wants it, but the price is one of the only things that can make an indie team stand out in such a competitive industry. Their style. Even games that try to make their own style to fit into the awkward shaped puzzle.
People have recommended me to play this game. It's called Thymesia, and I probably will.
Piece that is Unreal still fall into this uncanny generic valley. That is the trap of Unreal, an empty promise that you can make whatever you want. But whatever you make will always be generic and lack that character that pushes it to be the masterpiece.
I don't really think that's true, that everything that's made with Unreal is generic. I think that maybe this could be true as somebody who's worked with Unreal Engine a lot of times, so they're used to seeing what can and can't happen. But to say that everything is generic that comes out of Unreal is, I think, painting with too broad of a brush. And again, it's a new engine, so a lot of people are working with a lot of the same assets because they haven't developed such a backlog of them like what they have before this, or had before this.
Piece that you want it to be. Unless you have millions of dollars of budget, and then you might make something that looks unique.
Okay, so
I
it is
hate
possible.
that I'm saying this, but my nemesis, Unity, doesn't have this problem. It's more open-ended visually. It lacks the guardrails that Unreal places on you that are so hard to escape. Unity 2 can become samey, but it's samey in the way that people make their games generic and they look generic, and not in the way that the engine forces you to make it look the same. And yeah, there are always pros and cons to using either software, but in my opinion, as an indie designer that uses Unreal Engine every single day, Unreal Engine with each update is becoming less and less a tool for the solo developer and more becoming an overcomplicated mess that might become best used by large studios, lest the
I don't think I have enough knowledge in game dev to really have an opinion on this, but I don't really think that's a huge problem. Like, I remember, for example, whenever I started doing a lot of video editing, that Final Cut Pro was a lot easier for me to use, but Sony Vegas is what I went with because I wanted to have, like, more abilities to fine-tune things. So I think that there's absolutely a place for both types of things. Unity's hard to optimize. I mean, Valheim isn't well optimized, and it's made with Unity, but I don't know, like, every single game and how every game is made. So the software gets more complicated. Yeah, of course. I think that's what makes sense, is that, you know, if you have a game that has photorealism, there's a lot of things that go into making photorealism. So if you're trying to design a game that has, like, incredibly good graphics, you are going to have road bumps like that. And it is probably easier to use if you're a massive studio with a bunch of resources and knowledge. Yeah, I think he's probably right about that. Sure, but that makes sense, and I don't think that's a problem, and I don't think it's a good or a bad thing. It's just to use different tools for different situations.
The market might become so oversaturated with Unreal Engine 5 games that soon people might gawk at the sight of something made in Unreal. There might be such a plethora of genericity that might make people sick of seeing these games, and thus made in Unreal might soon be something that turns many people off from games made in it. But in all honesty,
They bought out anti-cheat, zero time paying attention to trying to monopolize distribution of game content, creation process. I mean, let's also contextualize that this person is boycotting or wants to boycott Unreal Engine for a reason that is completely separate from the way it looks. This is totally about some sort of, like, business stuff.
see, that's just a thought, and this whole video is completely opinionated. It's just what I think as a game designer. And if you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. I love Unreal Engine from the bottom of my heart. I've been using it for 7 years now, and it's made me the designer that I am today. But it clearly has some flaws that I hope don't send it down the path of dead engines of the past.
Oh, I don't think it's going to be a dead game or a dead engine. I think that's way too much. I think Unreal is doing great. I mean, I think a lot of games that are made in Unreal look fucking amazing. Absolutely. And if you want to make the argument that like maybe Unity is a better tool for making stylized games and Unreal is a better tool for making photorealistic games, then what's the problem with that? I think that's totally okay. So yeah, Unreal's amazing. Dude, shut up. I mean, like, I think that it's fair to consider other viewpoints. And yes, there is like a certain level of sameness to some of the graphics. But again, I feel like, and this could just be my, ignorance with game design. But what logically makes sense to me is that because it's a brand new type of software, a lot of the assets and tools and functionalities are shared. And as the tools exist for longer, they will fork off into their own unique styles more and more. That's what logically makes sense to me. But this is not coming from somebody that has experience with game dev. So I don't know. Not to mention optimization through Unreal Engine better than Unity Engine. I mean, like Valheim tells you that. Valheim optimization is dog shit. So yes, absolutely. What about Epic games like Unreal Tournaments? It's their engine. I mean, I don't know. I think Fortnite runs fucking great. Unreal Tournament was the last time we got one of those in like 2004. The assets from 4 can be used in 5. Yeah, but they're not going to look the same at the same level. They're not going to be as appealing in the same way. They don't have the fidelity because they're developed in a prior engine. I mean, that's kind of common sense, I would assume. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I would kind of expect that. Sifu also runs great, and it's on Unreal 4. I mean, Lost Ark runs amazing, and it's on Unreal 3. So you've got to keep that in mind, too. So new lighting models, because none of these games are developed in Rust. Oh, I don't know what that is. Stutter, Struggle, Shadow compilations in Unreal is most prominent problem at the moment. Callisto Protocol, disastrous launch on PC is a great example. Yeah, I mean, Bleak Faith, I think, was Unreal 5. I'm not 100% on that. But I'm pretty sure it was Unreal 5, and it had a lot of lighting and shadow problems. Absolutely. It was on Unreal 4. I was wrong. Honestly, I feel like the Unreal look isn't because of the programs being restrictive or putting guardrails. It's just lazy and passionless people who see surface-level potential of the engine and don't actually care to make something unique with the tools they have. That's fucking what I think. And then this is what does the guy say? I can totally see it being a factor as a designer. I feel like a lot of it isn't even out of laziness and that happens, but purely because the teams put too much weight on the engine for it to carry rather than the intense care for the art. So he's basically agreeing with that. I mean, for the most part. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to say it. One thing I have to point out, Forspoken shown quite a lot in this video when it was not made with the Unreal Engine. I think that Forspoken was made with a proprietary engine, right? That was a fork of, like, I don't remember. Luminous, yes, Luminous. That was the name. Yeah, it was like some proprietary, like, Square Enix engine or something like that. Thank God someone said it. I'm a 3D and VR RTVFX artist, and I can't even program. I can't program even though I've tried, but I can make things look pretty. There's no substitute for art, style, and talent. You give anyone the most expensive high-tech tool in the world, they won't know how to use it. Well, I think that actually they'll make it look worse because they have more ways to fuck up. You give artists any tool at all, they'll create art. Hard work pays off. That's always true. Yeah, the people with the right eye for things they're going to be able to make better content. It's just kind of common sense. Game design degree here, in my opinion, you're right. Unreal has a higher barrier to entry than Unity, but I'd argue either can be used to make a stylized game, and not that one would be better than the other. Your point about growing pains is very interesting. Yeah, again, I have to reemphasize, I'm speaking about this from a person who's a layman. And the last time I did anything like this is I used to do animation whenever I was 12 years old. Okay? So, that's about it. I've got no clue, man. And self-proclaimed game designers, what have they made? Well, we're not talking about it from a game designer perspective. What we're really talking about it from is the perspective of a user. So if a user finds something to be problematic, then I think that is objectively a bad thing. It's kind of like, it's like the idea that the customer is always right. Jeff Kaplan had a really good quote about this. He said, you can't rely on the user to give you the solution, but you can sure as hell rely on them to tell you if there's a problem. So us as video game players, it is not our responsibility to solve the problems that game developers have. Like, for example, it's not our problem whenever World of Warcraft has lag whenever it's a 20v20 fight. Like, that's not our responsibility to solve that. That's Blizzard's responsibility to solve that. And I think the players are not at fault whenever they say, hey, this is fucking garbage. You see what I'm saying? I don't see this as a problem. If more people can make games, more people want to make good games can. We just need to filter out the crap. I think that's true. And I think that, again, whenever you democratize gaming in the way that Unreal has, and I think that, again, like AI will also do in a different way, and you put those two things together, you are going to get a lot of uninspired, badly designed crap. But I think also you're going to get more inspired stuff that's made by people that maybe didn't have the resources and didn't have the tools, and these engines give them the tools to do that. So as with anything, almost anything, it's a double-edged sword. 20 years in industry, Unity's awesome for some types of games, mobile, indie, and it's flexible. Unreal is unmatched for rendering tech and world building. Both have merits, but Unreal is better suited for the games that I like to play. Yeah, and I think that that's completely fair. I think there's probably a lot of examples of things like that in the past.
A trip, one minute, trip, one